Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Wade Posehn, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. Welcome, everybody, to Underdog Rising. Today, we have Chandler Quintin with us, who is the co-founder and executive producer at Video Brothers. Chandler, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we're so excited to chat to you about your Underdog journey with us.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'd love to hear your underdog story. If you don't mind, just take a little bit of time to walk through your journey from, after college to where you are today so that the listeners can better understand you.
Sure. And I feel like my journey has been full of little underdog moments. I think that there's no one specific, instance where, I could define myself as an underdog. I think the entire thing and still even today is there's a little bit of an underdog vibe over here. But I was very resistant to going to college. As you can see in the background, I have a whole rack of guitars. I formerly wanted to be a rock star. I was a lead and rhythm guitarist for a really cool modern rock band. We were touring, playing big shows in high school. I had long hair, was wearing eyeliner and tight pants, the whole thing.
Yes.
A rock band. And I remember telling my parents I didn't want to go to college, and they laughed at me. And eventually they were able to steer me in the right direction. And I went to Drexel University, undergrad, studying entrepreneurship and legal studies, business law. And that was kind of an underdog moment for me. I didn't want to be there. Right. I didn't want to go to college. I was resistant to go. And kind of the silver lining, and we'll talk about this later in terms of the education stuff, is the entrepreneurship track is a program at colleges that offer it that gives you a well-rounded balance of all aspects of business. So it's not just finance. It's not just accounting. It's not just, marketing. It's a little bit of everything. And for an underdog who has no idea what they want to do in life, that was an incredible experience, which kind of led me as I continued the journey. I always felt that I didn't have a lot of direction throughout college. I was studying entrepreneurship, but I had no business ideas. I had no inspiration. I didn't even know what jobs there were out there because I was so mired in playing shows that I just didn't know how to function as an adult human being. And that led me to, at Drexel, they have a co-op program. And my last co-op, and for those of you who don't know what a co-op is, basically we go for school for 6 months for the year. And then the other 6 months we find a job, and we got paid real money to do real jobs. And it was incredible. So as a college student making decent money, doing serious jobs, it was awesome. So my last co-op, I landed at Razorfish, which at the time was the most respected and recognized, and I think the biggest advertising agency on the planet. They were owned by Microsoft at the time. And I remember my advisor at school said, if you work at Razorfish, it's like going to Harvard on your resume. So you might want to consider this job. And the job was a strategist at this big advertising firm. So I knew nothing about it, but I knew I was creative. I knew I could talk to people, and I was always kind of good with ideas. And I felt there was kind of something pulling me in that direction, and I just dove in head first. So as you can imagine, the biggest advertising firm in the world, and I come in as essentially a paid intern. I was kind of at the bottom of the ladder. And I spent the entire 6 months of that really trying to push the boundaries of myself as well as the person I was working for. My boss's name was Arch. He was an awesome mentor and really saw the potential in me of how I approached ideas. He very quickly went from giving me, basic admin work to do and, data entry things to, hey, I need you to come up with some ideas for the Neutrogena campaign. What do you got? And that was really inspiring for me. And as someone who had no direction, he identified things that I was good at and things that he thought I might have potential in. And he really pushed me to become that strategist that they were looking for. And it started kind of snowballing from there. I was helping him with pitches. I pretty soon wound up on client calls and prospect calls. And here I am pitching an app idea where you take a photo of your face and it will identify all your zits and what kind of cleaning product you should use to get rid of it and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. You can kind of look at something and think of ways where people can enjoy it and learn about it and experience it. And then that can come to life in a number of different ways. It could be a video, it could be an app, it could be a website, all these things. And that really started kind of, helping the underdog here find his footing. Yeah. And I left that company after my co-op was over. And this is where the underdog story continues, because at our kind of last day party thing after work, I bumped into somebody at the karaoke bar we were at in Philadelphia, and they were making some chit chat with me and mentioned that Razorfish was pitching them a iPhone app in the next couple of weeks. And prior to this, at the end of the co-op, I had already been talking to a few creative folks that were looking to maybe start an agency. And I was like, I work at one now. Like, we could totally make a small agency. This is cool. And the agreement was, if I can find somebody, a client that might be interested in some marketing services or an iPhone app or a website, then we might have a business here. Now, we didn't know what we were doing, and that's not a good business plan. But here I am at this bar, and this lady says that, Razorfish is pitching. And I said, if I had an agency, would you be cool if we came and pitched as well? And she looked at me, kind of like laughed a little bit and was like, sure, why not? And from that moment, I just kind of went for it. And that's a theme you'll see. I just kind of go for things because I felt that, hey, I knew we could build these sort of things. We were already kind of toying around with it. And knowing that Razorfish was pitching them and understanding that this client couldn't afford Razorfish, it actually, it was an appropriate move to make. Right. And next thing you know, that meeting is coming down the pipe. And it's so funny. I couldn't afford a suit in college. I didn't have a car. I had to convince my best friend, my roommate, to lend me a suit. And I'm a little bit taller and a little bit wider than he is. And I'm wearing this ill-fitting suit. And we're driving in his beat up car 45 minutes outside Philadelphia. And I'm scared. I'm nervous. And he came in and pretended to be the numbers guy with me and supported me through the meeting and helped answer some questions, which was helpful. And we ended up getting a no from that meeting. And then, it's part of the underdog story. Underdogs can't give up. So I followed up. Hey, is there anything we could have done to win your business? Is there anything we can do to make your decision easier? And I was persistent in asking, why? What did we miss? We're trying to learn here. And it turned out it was just really a difference of opinion. And because I was persistent, they actually came back a few weeks later and said, you know what, we're actually going to go with you. Wow. And that was our first client as that business. And it was exciting to have that moment where it's like, okay, you got to go for it. You got to ask questions. You got to ask for feedback. And just by doing so and showing that I was dedicated to the quality of that experience for that customer, it happened. So that kind of got the ball rolling. I was like, holy cow, I can do this. We can start an agency. Now, let's find client number 2. So the underdog story continues as we built that agency. We had, 20, 25 people up in Boston in a giant office. I was in my early 20s. It was like living the Facebook movie. I mean, we had it all. It was amazingly fun. And there were moments where we had, big ideas that weren't reality yet. So another part of the underdog journey was a huge deal we landed with the Essence Music Festival. And that is a African-American community event. I don't know if it's still hosted in New Orleans, but it was there every year. And my business was working on some really cool new technology using RFID bracelets to connect to your Facebook page so you could check into events and it would post to your page. Chandler just arrived at the Essence Music Festival. You could go to photo booths and take a photo and post it to your wall and do all sorts of things like that. And this was a concept we had. We had an MVP, and I had to do everything in my power to tell the story of what this could be in order to have Essence back the project and essentially fund it. And that led to a whole new trajectory for the business, which that business went on after I exited that agency to turn into Robin, the workplace software company. So it was just, again, those moments of going for it. And you'll notice that as I continue to talk, you got to go for it. You got to not be afraid. No is not the worst thing that's going to happen to you. And you just can't be fearful of negative outcomes. You really need to put yourself out there. So again, a moment where I went for it, and here we are, another huge leap in our career. And that was amazing. So after the agency and after I exited out of it and taking some time off, I don't tell too many people this part of the story, but I think it's important. I had a great exit, and I thought I was going to have so many ideas and start my next thing right away. And I found myself lost once again, not knowing what I wanted to do. There was significant things I couldn't do due to the agreement of the exit. So I was very much alone. I was candidly depressed. Wasn't even aware it was depression at the time. And my solution for that, it was to take the worst job I could ever find. And that was becoming a car salesperson for Mercedes-Benz.
Interesting.
And my theory was this: I need to do something that's going to grind me to the bone and inspire me to figure out what's next. And I don't know where that idea came from. It might have been my late mother who encouraged me to just like step outside of my comfort zone. I just needed to be busy. I'm the type of person where I need to be doing something. And if I'm not, I start falling apart. So I got that job, and oddly enough, I was actually really great at it. I could sell very expensive cars to people left and right. I made a great deal of money. And then one day it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I made some money. This was great. This is fun. But like now I'm ready, because I hate this so much, to do something new. And it all coincidentally happened. I met my current business partner, Brian, and he was looking to start a video agency. And that was the only thing I could do that wasn't carved out my non-compete. And once again, let's go for it. Yeah. Let's do this. We can do this. We've got to believe in ourselves. I've done it before. We can do it again. Here we go. So we started our video agency 11 years ago and started working with small businesses. Things started, we got a reputation for great customer experience. So more people started to notice us. My agency network started to kick in, and we were getting smaller jobs that were probably from overcapacity at other agencies kind of tossed down to us, and things were really cooking with gas. And we were working with Bose. We did some projects for the NFL. We were working with Google, launching companies out of their Area 120 incubator and all those things. And that all sounds great, but the Underdog story comes back. We found ourselves invited to pitch Lego, a live action YouTube series. And this is a moment, again, of going for it. Their initial idea was to do a kind of kitschy YouTube series where their audience would build the host would build something. Hey, what's up? I'm Chaz92. We're going to build a fire truck today. And me and my business partner kind of realized that, first of all, we have no business being in here with Lego. The people that are also pitching are the best agencies in the world. We got invited as a kind of a courtesy to be a local vendor, participating in these great projects. So we decided to tell Lego a different idea, knowing that we weren't going to get it. We wanted to express that we felt that it could be done more effectively, more different, and more fun. And we went for it. We put together a whole new idea for them. And we pitched them something that has never been done before, which is a fun and entertaining, almost like a late night show for kids. And at the end of that meeting, the head honcho in the room, he said, this is not what we asked for at all. And there's a long pause, and I was like, oof, I went for it and it didn't work out this time. And then he goes, this was a lot better. Wow. And it was once again a validating moment of, you got to trust your gut. You got to go for it. These are the fights worth fighting, because these are career and life-changing moments. And if you kind of fall to the wayside of fear, you might be hindering yourself from potentially a whole new trajectory for yourself. So we landed Lego, and that project was the biggest budget we've ever seen. It was it turned into a 2.5-year project because it was so successful after the pilot. And we made over 200 episodes of this series. It turned Lego into the #1 brand on YouTube, billions of hours watched, and 10 million new subscribers, all these great things. And then COVID happened. The show shut down. And nobody out there was doing production, and no one was giving us a call. Wow. So back to the Underdog grind again. What are we going to do? Right. So I'm getting to where we are today. Sorry, it's long-winded, but it's a fun story.
No, please. This is absolutely great. I think you're sharing so much insight. It's phenomenal. Keep going.
Oh, cool. So during COVID, Brian and I, we were pivoting constantly. We were trying to respond to the market. People are working at home now. They're trying to do remote productions. So we went as far as building out MVP software for something we called Super Easy Video, which was supposed to kind of be like the Uber of video production. And we built that software. We built the MVP. We went out to raise money. And this was the first time being an underdog felt in a long time like a real thing. I mean, we were running into VCs who were saying the same thing, what's your traction? How many customers do you have? And we were sitting there kind of baffled, being like, well, we have all this amazing experience and we've had these amazing wins and we're bringing all that knowledge into this thing. We couldn't understand why no one would believe in it. And that was really tough for us because we put a lot of time and effort and energy into it. And it was one of those chicken or the egg things where it's like, well, we need money to acquire customers. So to prove the traction. And although we got a few customers, great customers on board from our past history, we kind of abandoned that, realizing very quickly, and this is another thing Underdog should know when to back down out of a fight. We weren't the people to run a software company. We weren't the team to bring that vision to life. Although the principles of the business were really clever and the software was actually super intelligent. We still use it today. It was just knowing that this wasn't the direction we should go in and kind of digesting that and understanding that and coming to terms with it. You see a lot of folks kind of throw good money after bad a lot of the times and almost get in their own way. A lot of that has to do with ego. But Brian and I worked really hard together to kind of minimize our egos, to swallow our pride a little bit and understand that it's a positive thing to go back to the drawing board. So what did we do from there? We kind of took a look back on what worked for us over the last 11 years. And it always came down to a few things. One, it was making fun content. We love making fun content. The companies we make it for love it when we do it. It's always the most successful when it's funny or fun. Yeah. And we're like, okay, well, we can be a video company again and do it for everybody. But we really wanted to push ourselves to kind of address the bigger elephant in the room, which was, this is all well and good, but who are we for? We've worked for almost every single vertical there could ever be, minus an airline. Actually, we worked with a private airline one time. So maybe we did, maybe a car company. We haven't worked with a car company. And so we had a little hypothesis cooking up, while we're kind of scared for our well-being, we're on LinkedIn, seeing maybe we have to update our resume. We got to network a little bit. We started noticing LinkedIn was the most boring place on the planet. And it was white paper after white paper after infographic and boring stuff. And Brian and I, we kind of had the light bulb moment at the same time. We're like, well, wait a second. Like, why isn't there fun video here? Like fun advertising works in B2C and it's on Meta and Instagram and everywhere else. Like, why isn't it here? Why isn't anyone doing anything interesting here? So once again, as underdogs, we're like, well, what are we going to do? We're running out of runway. We're going to have to go find jobs soon. This sucks. We had a nice little break after the Lego show, but man, does money run out very quickly when you got nothing going on. So we decided to cook up a series of fun ads, kind of speaking to not being boring, not being ineffective, and essentially having fun. And we rebranded our company, which is another thing that was really hard for us to do. We spent over a decade working on our brand. And we just realized that, if we really want to take this leap, we have to go all in. We can't have our egos get in the way and say, oh, we spent 10 years on that brand. Right. We're aiming at a new market. We're aiming at a specific market. We need to really, really redefine ourselves. So we killed our brand, didn't look back, and launched those ads. And it was like lightning in a bottle. There are so many B2B companies out there that know that they need to stand out. They know that they need to cut through the noise and they don't know how. And so that was our hypothesis. Can we help these companies achieve success? And there we are. We're still in the underdog story as we're fighting the good fight, trying to convince B2B companies that fun works. And every day we're doing that. And the results are speaking for themselves. And now this underdog fight turns into a tipping point situation. Can the underdogs topple the norm? And that's where we are today is convincing more companies that fun is the way. It works really well. It saves you a ton of money because the ads actually work. And that's what we're working on now. So sorry that was so long-winded. Wow. It's a lot of ups and downs along the way, but things are going really well. And I'm excited to hopefully inspire people to know that it's all about just not giving up and continuing to try and believing in yourself. Really, it sounds stupid and simple, but it's really all there is to it.
I think you hit on such core elements there, so don't please. That was it, long or not or short. That was really, really great because you just touched on so many different elements at different stages within your career that so many people, starting out in their career might not have faced just yet. But you kind of
Mm.
went through and delivered not only what you went through, but the outcomes and how you went about overcoming those moments, right? And you guys have really like embraced that underdog rising story. I mean, there's multiple times, just overcoming those challenges was just absolutely exceptional. So one thing I wanted to touch on was you've held like a lot of various different roles in various fields, right? As well as, you stated you worked for Mercedes at one point in time. You've really been in video production, but there's also a part of it where you were a professor at certain
Oh, yeah.
universities, like from like, even if you go way back in your career to like business, analysis as well,
Oh, yeah.
like, and now you've shifted to more digital marketing and video production. Like, how have those diverse experiences contributed to your success?
That's an awesome question. And I think that the constant in every one of those experiences was all about communication,
Mm,
strategic communication, which is different than communication, in my opinion, as well as process. And, communication in any of those jobs, you're always talking with people, you're listening to people. Keyword there, you're listening to people.
mm,
And the strategic communication is more about, well, how do you handle that information you just received? How do you get your client or prospect or whoever is on the other end on your page? And it's less about saying the right things and more about knowing the timing of it, how you say it, the sequence of how you approach things. And all of those jobs, whether it was the business analyst stuff and helping businesses come up with ideas for product applications, or teaching my MBA students, or biz dev with the agencies and video production, it's all about the people.
mm,
People are the lifeblood of every business, and being able to talk to them effectively, being able to listen to them effectively and let them know that you hear them is super important. And then knowing the strategy of how that all works together, and then process is what drives everything forward. Right. So, knowing your objective and knowing where you're starting and knowing how to get there is a lot of how it all comes together. And, I always recommend to people, process is what's going to get you to the finish line. And then
mm.
communication is going to be how smoothly you get there. And I think that's important. And in any of those roles, all of those things were constant. It was honestly, if looking back, it all kind of has felt like the same job.
Hmm.
I will say, working for myself this is my 17th year now, being responsible for the money in my pocket and the food on the table for my family. It's just, it all comes down to everything's kind of the same, and kind of knowing that is
Interesting.
comforting, right? It's
Yeah.
comforting. Um, but yeah, so many diverse experiences there, like all over the place.
Yeah, no, and I think they're all part of your journey. They all culminate together to form you into who you are today to advance your next challenge or what the next thing that you're trying to achieve in life. So you shared, a lot of monumental moments in your life, but would you mind sharing sort of a pivotal moment early in your career that convinced you to switch towards founding your own agencies and going on your own, right? Because you also mentioned you've been working for yourself now for 17 years. So that's very interesting. Was there one pivotal moment, or was there maybe a few elements that, affected that change?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that contributed to it. I think, the people around me were really supportive, and they were excited for the ideas I had.
Hmm.
And I think feeling that community support and motivation is important for anybody. And no one wants to feel like they're going at it alone. It's not that everyone has to jump on the journey with you, but just being able to tell a friend that you're working on something cool, and that friend goes, "Yeah, that is really cool. And guess what, man? You can do it. I believe in you." Like, those are things that people need to be hearing. And if there's no one there to tell you that, you need to start telling yourself that. And I
Yes.
think the pivotal moment for me was kind of that realization that anything is possible. And I think once you have that once in a lifetime experience where something that you thought was impossible becomes possible, it changes everything, and it changes how you look at the world. And I think that is a very special moment that not everyone has the chance to get. And it might be because they're not looking hard enough, but there are these little moments where you suddenly realize that I can actually control the universe in front of me, and it's not the other way around. And that's just a mindset shift. And
Yes.
that definitely had happened, when I first left Razorfish, and, everyone around me was like, go for it. Let's get this meeting. Let's do this thing. And once that happened, it was like, wow, it is possible. And again, with the RFID thing, wow, it is possible. Let's do it. The Lego thing, wow, we did it. Let's go. And then with this B2B stuff, it's working. People want it. They love it. Let's go. It's a mindset thing for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you say that, anything is possible. You're right on point with that too. And people just have to understand, you have to put work in. It's not just going to come to you. There is work associated behind it. And at times you might have to roll up your sleeves, dig in, and really spend a lot of time in that to advance yourself. So, you've gone through a lot of moments where you've invested in yourself, right? And banked on yourself. So what is the best investment you've ever made in yourself throughout your journey?
Man, I thought about this one in advance a little bit, and I think there's a few different ways you can approach this. I think, things that cost $0 is believing in yourself, right?
Yes.
It's simply going for it. It sounds weird, but, getting started and simply trying is 80% of the battle. I think the best investment you can make that doesn't cost you any money is self-motivation. Other investments you can make, and there's opportunity costs involved in this one, is I recommend a lot of folks try working at a startup. At a startup, it's going to be chaotic. Well, depending on the size, right? I guess if you're going 0 to 1, let's talk about that. So a 0 to 1 startup where there's nothing and you're starting from day one, and maybe it's a couple co-founders, or maybe you're the first or second person in the door. I recommend that for folks because you'll be experiencing so many different things so quickly with so many ups and downs that it will really jar you to the point of figuring out what you're good at, what you're not good at, and how well you handle those situations. And being at a startup is not about being the best at anything. It's about being a team player. It's about fighting the good fight. It's about being an underdog on purpose. And that type of environment and that type of hustle can really shift a person and inspire them to do different things. For folks who don't know their particular direction, a startup is a great place to go from, hi, I'm coming in here to do marketing, but now I'm also doing strategy, and now I'm also doing sales. And guess what? Now I have to do accounting because I got to fill in. And it's that team sport mentality where everyone's pitching in that really just shapes an individual. And if that startup is successful and you're growing, you'll be able to replace the elements that you suck at, for lack of a better phrase, and then excel at what you're good at. But getting to that point where you can bring another person in, that all comes back down to all the hard work you put in to get there in the first place. People are expensive. Human resources is the most expensive thing.
Yes.
So it's all very rewarding. And the investment there is the opportunity cost of what you might earn over however long it is at a more established organization or a traditional career path. A lot of my best friends went the other way. They all worked corporate life. My best friend that, who was drove me to that meeting, he worked at Goldman Sachs and became a VP after 10 years. And now he's really high up at BrightSign, and he's on that path. And that's really cool. And that was really great for him. I don't have a lot of friends that do the entrepreneurial thing or do the startup thing. I mean, if they're my friends, they're probably my clients, because a lot of our clients were those businesses to begin with, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's a lot of investments you can make. And then, beyond that, this is another tangible investment. And this is going to sound silly and roast me in the comments, but one of the best investments I ever made was starting therapy. And not because I needed it for a particular reason, but when you live in a chaotic life and there's a lot of ups and downs, your family and friends can only take so much of what might happen to you when you're going through that. It's a lonely place. There's not a lot of people that can relate. And as I mentioned, I don't have a ton of friends that are running their company unless they're my clients. It's a little different, but having someone to tell these stories to, work things out with, and understand what stress is and understand what emotions are is really helpful. And I'm not ashamed to bring that up at all, because I think it's important. I'm not preaching about I'm not prescribing it, but I think it is worthy of doing. And luckily, the world has made this type of kind of treatment, if you will, a lot more affordable. So
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you need it. It's helpful. And once I started, this was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago. Even when I feel like I don't need it, I still go every time. I've never missed an appointment because it's the commitment that matters to me too, and showing that I'm committed to those types of things. It gets better the less you think you need it. So that's a cheesy one, but hey.
No, I'm glad that you touched on that, because there's only so much that our minds can take, right? Especially when you're in your phase of, entrepreneurship, you're just going at it, you're diving in full ball. Like, you need to be able to talk things out, because there's just so much going on. It's kind of like almost you're hitting that release valve to just let stuff out so you can take more stuff in, right, as you're just going through it. So no, thank you for touching on that. And it's really important to focus on, especially nowadays with, the younger generations. I think there's a lot of different stressors versus in the past. And it's just great that it's so accessible now, right, compared to how it was in the past. And there's less of a negative sort of connotation to it, right? It's good. We need to talk about our feelings and just everything that we're going through. Because like you said, burdening family members over time, it just becomes a struggle. There's only so much that they can take too. But
not fair to them. And you know what? It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared.
Yes.
It's not okay to keep that inside of you, because that's going to create havoc. So you need an outlet for that. And I think everyone could benefit from it. And if they give it a shot, they might understand what I'm talking about. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very true. So I'm going to swing it a different direction just for a little fun, interesting fact. You're a busy person. So I want to know, at any given moment in life, how many tabs do you have open on your screen?
It's a hilarious question. Well, let me start here. How many screens do I have in front of me right now? I got my phone, I got my laptop, I got my iMac, I have a secondary monitor, I have an iPad. Between them, I probably have, I don't know, 100, 200 tabs open. I'm very organized with my workflows and everything. So I have like my
That's
analytics
brilliant.
and my ad management stuff on one side. I got my spreadsheets on this other thing. I'm very organized that way, but yeah, I am a tab kind of person. Now, at the end of every week, though, I do consolidate, right? So there's stuff I opened up earlier in the week, and I kind of consolidate down to my baseline, and my baseline's probably, let's call it 30 tabs of things I actually use every day. And then by the end of the week, there's probably 100. And then so
it
after
builds
this,
up over time.
Yeah, that's a great question though. I bet you there's some. I think that the thing that's overwhelming is I have like multiple screens where all of this is happening.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We've had a range from, some people say 6 to some people have like 40, but you're definitely the highest at this point, which is interesting. But it's also, you brought up a good point with how many screens do you actually have in front of you at that given moment as well, right? So, and it's all great because it all goes, through to all the different devices. So kind of on that same note and same vein, what are some apps, plugins, or software that you're currently using that is optimizing or making your life easier?
Ooh, I love this question. My favorite tool of all time is Airtable. And I don't know if you're familiar with Airtable or if your audience is, but Airtable is a very special platform because the power of relational databases is really impressive and what you can do with that. I didn't know really what Airtable was when I started digging into it. I thought of it at first as like a spreadsheet replacement, but when I realized you could build on top of it, we actually built that super easy video software. The back end of it was completely powered by Airtable.
Wow.
So I was able to launch tasks, reassign things, like onboarding a client, I could hit one button and then all of these things would happen, pulling in information all around my databases to build our proposals, our contracts, our pricing, and all of these things instantly. I was saving, once I realized I could save 10 minutes on something, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then what else can I save 10 minutes on? And then before you know it, I was turning things that would take me, 20 hours down to 5. I was turning things that were taking me 1 hour down to minutes. Things that were taking me a half hour weren't taking any time whatsoever anymore, period. So Airtable has been one of those platforms that I'm just so excited every time they roll out something new, and I'm still learning. I know very little about it, as much as it sounds like I know.
Yeah.
But man, it's a cool platform, and you can do so much with it and replace so many things, and really optimize your life. So I connect Airtable to Slack. So when a call gets booked, it goes to my Airtable, logs it, then notifies me in Slack, and then brings in some research about that prospect and all of those things. And yeah, Airtable makes it all possible. And maybe someone there will hear it. I'm a huge fan. Would love to work with you. You guys are awesome. Yeah, Airtable is great. Such a cool platform. Beyond that, I don't really use anything particularly special that anybody else might not have heard of or used. Calendly is great. Canva is awesome. I'm not a designer. So when we started getting really busy here and my team had no time to make my graphics that I needed for LinkedIn posts or pitch decks, I just took over on Canva, and it makes someone like me, who's the village idiot of design, like pretty good. And that's incredible. And then there's tons of stuff in the video space, but that's a better question for my co-founder, Brian, who's in charge of all our creative, and he's a production nerd. So for like business and organization, Airtable.
I think that's great. Yeah. And, hey, Airtable, reach out to Chandler, hit him up. See what happens there. But so, you've gone through a lot of experiences and you shared a lot of knowledge with us today. So thank you for that. But like, when you look back now, right, because you are where you are, you've gone through so many situations, you've risen to the top, and you're still continuing to rise today. But like, what is one thing that you wished you could have known when you were starting out your career journey?
It's a great question. It's a little bit of a tough one because I think there's so many things. So maybe I'll touch on a few of them. But I mean, number one, it's like getting that moment of realizing that anything's possible and you can achieve things is I wish that happened earlier, right? I wish that happened before I gave my parents heart attacks with me when I said I wasn't going to go to college, right? Like, I just wish I had that moment, because I think I would have gotten started a little earlier on some of this stuff, which is cool. I think, knowing that there's people out there that want to help is something that I just never even thought of. Like, asking somebody for help is just something that I was never really in tune with. And then I remember a few mentors that I've met over the years. Like, it was that moment of like, oh wait, I can ask someone for help. They want to help me. They're here to help me, and that's kind of their role. And that's what they want to do. They're a mentor. They've had their experience, and now they're at that point where they want to kind of pay it forward or pass on some knowledge or whatever. And just like knowing that there's people out there that do want to genuinely help other people was like a game changer. And I wish I knew earlier, because I would have asked for help so much earlier in my career. And this is something that I'm actually learning like recently, is that there are folks out there that want to help everybody out. And I'm one of those people. I love helping people. And I could have looked inward and gone like, well, who am I? I'm a helpful person. Like, oh, shouldn't I ask other people for help? No, I'm always the one giving it out. But I think when you flip that around, that was just pivotal. And I would encourage everybody, just ask for help and support. There are people out there that want to help anybody. And those people are critical, because you need that outside perspective. You need that guidance. You need that motivation and direction. And especially if you don't have parents that are into what you do, right? A lot of entrepreneurs have parents that are, blue collar workers, or maybe they're scientists or doctors or whoever it may be. Who do you ask? A lot of people think to their parents or their siblings, but if everyone's completely in a different direction, like, where are you going to go? So don't be afraid to ask a stranger. I mean,
and it's interesting because you bring that up. It's like, and we live in this day and age of social media, right? Where you can connect with anybody worldwide. And I think oftentimes there's a perspective where it's like, oh, I shouldn't reach out to individuals through social media, but it's like, you can, right? Maybe you've got to take a little bit more of a strategic approach, build a relationship first before you go in with a big ask, but take that time to really lean into the others that have experience. And that's where just, once again, thanks for coming on the podcast today, because I think that this is an element that, you're also, once again, giving to folks, and hearing your story is just going to motivate so many other individuals, right, that are looking to start out and, challenge the status quo and push the limit. But you touched on earlier on motivation, right, which is really impactful for getting you across that line to keep going. But at the same time, you also highlighted like discipline, and
Hmm.
I think that after a while, motivation can fade and discipline steps in to really keep it moving forward, right? Even when you don't want to do it, you step into discipline and keep it going. So, has there been one habit that has contributed to your success?
Well, first of all, I think that's brilliant to say and to conceptualize that when motivation fails, discipline takes over,
Mm.
and then motivation can come back because
Yeah,
sometimes you just aren't motivated. But if you're disciplined, you'll keep going. I think that's I think that's profound. Actually, that you
mm,
said that. I'm taking a pause for a second because I think that's just that's a beautiful economy of words on
mm,
that too, and that's totally true. I think that will the habit that has contributed to my success the most is um, being aware, and that means like listening and watching, right?
mm,
Looking around you, looking to what other people are doing, observing what others are doing, observing others' success and failures, and listening to people when they talk to you and they speak to you and they have an idea. If you're not holding up your end of the bargain and observing the world around you, A, you're going to miss a lot of things, but B, you're not going to be able to contribute to that universe in the best way that you can. Um, I Listening is something that I've been working on forever, and everyone can always get better at it. And it's not just sitting there and listening to people; it's actually hearing what they're saying and understanding it and digesting it and all of those things.
mm,
It's a habit, man. Like,
mm,
listening is it's one up there. And it's funny, I say this very freely, and then in my personal relationships and stuff, that's probably where I need to do even more listening, right?
mm,
Professionally, I'm amazing at
mm,
it.
mm,
Personally, that's probably where I still struggle.
mm,
So I need to remind myself and take these moments of like kind of what you just said. It's like, okay, I'm motivated to listen, but in my personal life, if I'm too busy, it's a little tough. But that's where the discipline can kick in and really push me to continue that path.
mm,
Um, Man, oh man, I love that you said that. That's
mm.
kind of took me off guard in a good way. I appreciate it.
No, yeah, of course. But I like what you touched on there too with hearing, right? Like, yes, okay, we can listen, but if you even think about the anatomy of the human body, it's interesting. We tend to talk so much, right, as individuals, but like we have one mouth and two ears. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I get it's
Right.
because of the audio right and left, but even if you just think about that simplicity, it's like, oh, well, maybe we technically should listen and actually hear individuals more than like speaking more. But yeah, I think that's great.
Mm.
So to shift it a little bit more once again, is there a website, a podcast, or a resource that you go to for learning new things?
For learning, so this was interesting because I think I have an answer to this that's not where I go to learn new things, but it's a book I reference often to help me understand the world better around me, and not only where we are today, but where we came from and where we're going to go. So I know some people will go, here's a blog or whatever. I'm going to take a different approach to this answer. And
Let's
there's this
go.
book that is very, very interesting. There's no political bias in this type of book, so everyone can enjoy it. It's called The Fourth Turning. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. I'll touch briefly
No,
about that, but
no.
it's by William Strauss and Neil Howe. And it's a sequel to a very long book called Generations, which is essentially the theories and principles around the cycles in which our modern societies go through. The fourth turning refers to the last part of the four cycles.
Mm,
And this explains kind of who you are as a person, what your role is in each of these phases in modern society, and what that means as you go into the next phase. And unfortunately, it's a curve, right? So there's the bottom, and then it goes and it peaks and it comes down, and then it just keeps repeating. The
mm,
fourth turning is the final phase in the cycle before it goes back to the first part of it, which is a positive. Um, the unfortunate thing about the fourth turning theories and concepts is that every fourth turning I think the last 7 out of the 8 times it's happened has ended in a total war, which is unfortunate. The last
wow.
ending
Yeah.
of the fourth turning, the last one we went through, the end of it was World War II. But then there was the 50s, and our whole country had a huge boom after that. And then
Mm,
you have the awakening, which is when people start learning new things and getting new cultures and becoming more people. And that was what you saw in the 60s and 70s. And then there's the unraveling, which is when things start falling apart. So in the 80s, a lot of crime, a lot of culture shifts and everything like that. And then the fourth turning is when things unfortunately kind of fall apart. And right now, things are pretty scary out there for a lot of the world. And I think that there's comfort in understanding that this is a cycle. This has happened multiple times. It will continue to happen. But I think what's really comforting about that book is it describes every generation. So it describes your parents' generation. It describes your siblings' generation. It describes your generation and what your role and impact is in those phases. So it kind of gives you this framework to think about who you are and what impact you can make on the world, because everybody has a role and they're all important.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting book. It's really nerdy to recommend something that's totally not business related, not marketing related, not video related. You're not going to learn a new skill from this book, but what you will learn is a new way to look at the world you're in. And it kind of gives you some comfort to know that, hey, although things suck right now and things are pretty scary, what comes next is actually going to be pretty amazing. And I think people need to kind of have that mindset. Always be optimistic. There's no point in being pessimistic at all. I don't think that does anyone any favors. It affects yourself. It affects the people around you and your community, and so on and so on. So the more people that can be inspired to just think positively and understand their role and what they can do to make the best of what we have, that's going to be a game changer for everybody. So I always recommend that book. I will say every time I recommend it, I check in with folks if they've read it. A lot of people don't. It's a dense book. But I will tell you, if you're a nerd and you're into history and you're into thinking about the future, this book will absolutely be illuminating. It might blow your mind, and it will be a fun read. The full title of the book is The Fourth Turning, An American Prophecy, What the Cycles of History Tell Us About America's Next Rendezvous with Destiny. So if that sounds interesting to you, check it out. And it was written, the interesting part about this book particularly, it was written in 1997. The things they describe that will be happening in the fourth turning, because this was written before the fourth turning began, you'll read it, you'll go, wow, all of this happened. So it's a spooky book in a good way. Yeah.
Definitely go read it. But yeah, no, please do. That'd be great. I want to read it. You piqued my interest, because I think that even ties in nicely with sort of the underdog rising element. Like it's cyclical. There might be times where you'll be down in the dip and you've got to fight and come back around, and you'll go through those periods of elements of struggle, like, classified as the war. But then there are those moments where it'll come back around and be really positive, and that ties back into that motivation and discipline. And I think you piqued my interest. I definitely want to take a look, and I'm sure users will go out and check it out as well.
That's cool.
So you've gone through elements of like where we felt stuck, right? And I feel like this next question ties into the fourth turning as well, kind of nicely. But like, based on your journey, like, what advice would you give to someone if they're feeling stuck in their career and potentially contemplating a significant change?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I encourage everybody to just sit with it for a minute. Understand that it's natural to feel stuck. Understand that it's part of life. Part of life is feeling those feelings and understanding that being stuck is part of it. And I think that's step one. It's like the phases of grief. You just got to acknowledge that it's going on and go, you know what? Things suck. I feel stuck. It's happening. How long you stay in that phase is up to you. When I exited my agency and I didn't know what to do, it was multiple weeks of me being just like waking up every day, watching TV all day, and going to bed at night and just being like, oh, this sucks. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I think you need to be searching for inspiration. And I think a lot of people will do that in multiple different ways. One of my recommendations always is to spend time with yourself. I think a lot of people don't face their fears because they really like to jam their schedules, their life with social stuff, friends and family and all that. And it's a distraction sometimes when you're really going through it. And sometimes you do need to be by yourself to really think about your way out. The other thing I'll say is I don't think there's a magic bullet to get out of a rut or being stuck. But I think that getting up is half the battle. So finding something that checks off one of the boxes. I mean, think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think that's from the Psychology 101 terminology. That baseline stuff, like if you're stuck and say you got laid off, right? And you don't know what to do next. you might need to find a job just to get those bills paid.
Right.
But like I did, find a job that is going to grind you to the point of finding something new. Because there's an upside in that, like know that it's not a great job, know that it's going to suck, know that it's not what you want to do. Because if you're working a job every day where that's the case, your brain's going to kick in and do what it does best. And it's going to help you find your way out.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people like to just like wait around for the right opportunity. But what's worked for me in almost every situation is putting yourself into hard situations, putting yourself into the mud. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth doing. And then from there, I think it's talking about it, right? So once you've accepted that this is happening, once you're trying really hard to motivate yourself, I think it's time to talk about it. Ask questions, get out there. You kind of need to reinvent yourself when these things happen. And that's a great opportunity. It shouldn't be scary. It should be exciting, because you can go from being at the bottom of the barrel to the cream of the crop just by taking a breath, getting out there, doing it, finding something that inspires you, and then following that path. And I think also being open-minded to different paths. I think a lot of people kind of get their grooves kind of channeled in, and this is the path I'm on. But you might be surprised with trying something new and trying something different. It might be scary, but hey, worst case scenario, you find out you don't like something for sure. Best case scenario, maybe you've redefined your career. And I think that's happened to me. I mean, I started doing business analysis stuff where I'm just taking a product and looking at it and going, well, how else can this be used in the market? Mm-hmm. And then I went from building iPhone apps and websites and pitching big marketing ideas. Cool. And then I pivoted over to selling cars for a tiny, tiny bit.
Right.
And then I pivoted to video production, something super creative. Like, I didn't let myself stay in those grooves. In fact, by nature of, reality of the, the non-compete agreements or clawbacks and things like that, I had to do something different. But if I could go back in time and I didn't have restrictions, I probably still would have done something different, because I just knew that this is only the beginning, right? I'm a young person. I have room to try new things, fail at new things, succeed at new things. Just you gotta start with just admitting it to yourself and then going from there. But finding your way out, your brain is going to do a lot of the work for you if you treat yourself correctly and appropriately and with care.
And that's where I think it's important to talk about it, right? Because your mind is going to take the most of it. And you touched on earlier as well, like it's the mindset work, right? Like I actually have on my monitor screen here, it's a little saying that I always reference, but it's, the mindset shift comes before the income shift. Like it really has to. You have to do that mental work, talk about it before you can shift into another area of life or that growth, right? So you've touched on like a lot of different skills, like a ton. Like I probably just want to go back and like list them all out after this podcast episode. But like, was there at all an unexpected one that you might have learned throughout going through all of the various different changes that you went through in life?
Well, here's where I can bring it full circle. In the beginning, I talked about how I wanted to be a rock star, right?
Yes.
So from when I was 13 to 19, 20 years old, I was playing in bands. My first band, I was the lead singer. So I had to get up on stage. And this was like when like kids were going to these shows. Like I was 15 years old, 16 years old, and like 150 people would come to our shows, which was cool. Like there was like the punk rock scene and the pop punk scene. And that was huge in New England where I grew up. So I had to get on stage, sing into a microphone, which is the most embarrassing thing I could do. I had to jump around. I had to sing songs about girls that were in the crowd or whatever it may be. And that kind of getting yourself out there and just like letting the fear go and just going for it was, I think, what makes me who I am today. I can get in front of people. I'm comfortable talking with them. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to put myself out there. I'm not afraid to look silly. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. And that really came down to that experience on stage. As silly as it sounds, that is honestly the thing that I think separates. That's the core skill that I picked up from that it's like, man, no wonder why that was part of my life. And that I cash that in all the time. I mean, getting in front of Lego and pitching them. I mean, if you've never been on a stage in front of people, public speaking or singing or doing anything like that, playing an instrument where you could mess up and everyone's going to make fun of you, like, it's going to be really hard for you to get up there in front of the dream client of your entire life and tell them that their idea is not great.
And
and
yours
do it
is
with
better.
confidence, and
Yeah.
do it with a way that makes them feel like curious and not offended, right? Like, how do you do that? And I think that's where it all comes full circle. I tell people all the time, it's like, yeah, like I was jumping around on stage with a guitar, and I jump around on stage with a guitar when I'm in a business meeting sometimes, basically. Like, it's the same thing. Like, just gotta,
Rock
I don't
on,
know, it's a
man.
weird thing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
That's how we go full circle. Yeah.
I think that's so great. It's such a wonderful way to round it out because, it's crazy to hear that public speaking beats out dying as a number one fear, right? And that
No way,
yeah,
really?
it does. Yeah, public speaking is the number one fear
Huh.
in the world, and it beats, yeah, dying. But like, it's so crazy that you reference that because you force yourself into that element at such a young age, and it just molded you into how you can shine later on through your life, like getting in front of those clients. Because at times it can be extremely nerve wracking. Like you say, it's you going up and saying, I like your idea, but like, here's mine, So I think that that's really great that you touched on that. And it's, anybody out there, if you've never done like a Toastmasters or public speaking, definitely recommend it. Put yourself out there, take away that
Yeah.
fear so you can just dive right in and do what you do best, So
It takes practice. It takes
yeah.
practice. It's worth it too. Plus, like, I want everyone to feel like their voice is worthy of being heard, right? Like, that's how I want people to feel, and that's how people should feel. So don't be afraid to get up in front of the room and read your poem or give your pitch or whatever, because you are valuable. Your ideas are valuable. Everyone has value to contribute. So yeah, like I'm so glad you align with that, because it's so important that people realize that they have value. I think that what stops a lot of people, and what drives fear is they don't think that their ideas are good. They don't think what they have to say is important, and that's just not true at all.
Yeah.
Maybe your delivery is not there, but the intent of what you wanted to say is probably valuable.
Yeah.
So believe in that. And it might be scary to get in front of folks and talk, but practice makes perfect. You got to keep doing it.
That it does, man. Chandler, it has been phenomenal. I appreciate you coming on here today, sharing your knowledge, your journey with us. I mean, I think there's a lot of key takeaways that people can get from this episode today. So I just want to thank you for your time, man. And it's been really, really great.
Awesome. And if there's anything I can do to help you or anyone in your audience, let me know. I'm a helpful person. I know a lot of people in a lot of places.
No, that's great. I think you touched on a cool element. Like, what are maybe some of the places that, if somebody listening today wants to connect or follow or reach out, like where can they go and find you?
LinkedIn's the best place. I'm there every day. You'll find me very easily. Chandler Quintin. My profile photo is my face upside down, because that's how you stand out on LinkedIn. It's so easy. Or you can visit us at thevideobrothers.com. And if anyone wants to send me a personal email, go for it. It's my first name, Chandler, at thevideobrothers.com. Like I tell everybody, I'm here to help. I'm not here to twist anyone's arm on any particular thing. If you got a problem, you need some advice, if I don't have it for you, I know someone that will. So I'm all for it.